7:42 a.m. Arctic waters. The USS Gerald R Ford cuts through 14-foot waves, her steel hull steady against the biting wind. On the command deck, radar operators freeze. 3 new contacts appear, triangulated, deliberate, closing fast. Russian submarines. Not 1, not 2, but 3. Their signatures scream diesel-electric. Loud, clunky, but moving with purpose. They aren't patrolling, they're circling. Beneath the waves, a Kilo-class creeps closer, its acoustic shadow spilling across sonar displays. To the northeast, another sub pushes through the thermocline, its noise spiking 12 decibels above background. And to the south, a third rises, forming a tightening noose around America's most expensive carrier. Above the ocean, FA-18E Super Hornets sit armed and ready, each one primed to launch within minutes. Yet the order hasn't come. The strike group holds steady. Every sailor knows the rules. Restraint until the last possible second. But restraint doesn't calm the pulse. It sharpens it, because the Russians aren't just prowling. They're making a statement, and with every nautical mile, the circle grows smaller. The question isn't if they'll strike. It's how far they're willing to push before the Americans answer. The next move belongs to Moscow, 7:46 a.m. The order doesn't come over radio chatter or public frequency. It comes from Moscow, encrypted, cold, and absolute. Tighten the ring, force the Americans to yield. The Russian crews don't cheer. They don't hesitate. They know this isn't routine patrol. This is a test. On the surface, the guided missile destroyer Admiral Levchenko breaks from its lazy 15-knot glide and surges ahead. Within 63 seconds, she's charging at 28 knots, slicing through black water like a blade. Her radar switches from passive sweep to sharp precision, beams narrowing, locking, not on an escort, but on the Ford herself. A direct message: we're aiming at your crown jewel. The Americans don't flinch. Inside the Ford's Combat Direction Center, officers call out bearings and ranges in clipped voices. Every electronic signal from the Russian ships is copied, logged, and fed into the network. Within seconds, every vessel in the strike group holds firing solutions. 100 missiles wait silently in their tubes, but no one fires. Not yet. Because this battle isn't about the first shot. It's about showing who owns the sea without pulling the trigger. And the Russians are about to find out. 7:51 a.m. The ocean isn't the only front. From Millennia Air Base, 220 nautical miles away, 4 Russian Su-30 SM fighters claw into the Arctic sky. Their afterburners burn white against the horizon, their payloads heavy with KH-31P anti-radiation and KH-35U anti-ship missiles. Each weapon capable of Mach 3 strikes, each one designed to kill radar systems or pierce a warship's hull in seconds. They close fast, burning fuel at a brutal rate. Within minutes, they'll cross into the Gerald R. Ford's defensive ring, the 25 nautical miles of airspace where U.S. doctrine demands immediate response. On the carrier's deck, flight crews sprint across steel under the whistle of steam catapults. Chains clatter, jets roar. The first 4 FA-18E Super Hornets of the Air Wing are armed, checked, and waiting for the go. Each pilot sits helmeted, silent, steady, one word away from war. But the Americans still hold. No launches yet, no jamming, just patience. Because they know the Russians are burning fuel faster than they can afford, and the deeper they push, the more they reveal. But Moscow's gamble isn't finished. The sea still hides its deadliest move. 7:55 a.m. on the USS Thomas Hudner sonar operators lean in close. The headsets crackle with faint echoes, mechanical, uneven, loud. It's no phantom. It's a Russian Kilo-class submarine crawling just below the thermocline at 3 knots. Its acoustic profile is textbook, clunky, rattling, 12 decibels over background noise. To an American sonar tech, it's as obvious as a siren in the night. But that's not the only contact. Another sub lurks to the northeast, deeper, running quiet, trying to mask itself in the Arctic layers. A third pushes from the south, forcing the Gerald R. Ford strike group into a three-point squeeze. It isn't subtle, it's a message. Yet what the Russians don't know is that they're already being hunted. For 8 days, a Virginia-class attack submarine has been gliding silently nearby, logging every noise, every screw rotation, every shift in depth. Its torpedoes sit primed, locked, and dialed in on the kilo. If orders came down, the Russian sub wouldn't last 15 seconds. The Americans don't pull the trigger. They don't have to. Because sometimes the loudest warning is silence, and the Russians are about to hear it. 8:02 a.m. The Admiral Levchenko's fire control radar snaps into focus. Not scanning, not probing, locking. The beam hardens on the USS Gerald R, the crown jewel, the $13 billion fortress of steel and jet fuel. It's no longer a patrol. It's a loaded gun aimed at the heart of the U.S. Navy. Inside the Ford's Combat Direction Center, alarms buzz, red lights flash. Protocols kick in. Every escort destroyer silently updates firing solutions. SM-6S, ESSMS, and CIWS systems turn toward the Russian signal. The network is alive. Every missile tube is one command away from lighting the Arctic sky. And yet, no order comes. The Americans refuse to bite. They know this is posturing, a dangerous bluff. A lock held for 31 seconds, long enough to say we could, but not long enough to force a counterstrike. The tension is unbearable. Sailors grip their stations, pilots wait strapped in cockpits, thumbs near triggers. One slip, one misread signal, and the Arctic turns into the opening battle of a world war. But instead of chaos, the Americans answer with calm. And the real move comes, not from the Ford, but from her flight deck. 8:07 a.m. The order cuts through the ship like a lightning strike. Launch the air wing. Within seconds, the USS Gerald R. Ford erupts into motion. Steam catapults hiss, deck crews sprint, and jet engines scream into life. The first FA-18E Super Hornet slams down the runway, tailhook released, rockets into the gray sky. 47 seconds later, another follows. Then another. And another. A storm is rising. Overhead, an E-2D Hawkeye circles at 25,000 feet, its radar eyes sweeping 6 million cubic miles of airspace. Every Russian jet, every missile signature, every vibration in the spectrum becomes a glowing dot in a shared digital picture. 2 EA-18G Growlers join the fight. Their jamming pods light up, flooding Russian screens with ghosts. 4 American fighters become 12, then 20, then phantoms darting across false horizons. The Su-30 pilots, chained to outdated radars and voice commands, are suddenly blind. The Americans haven't fired a single missile. They don't need to. In less than 10 minutes, the battlefield belongs to them. But below the waves, the Russians are desperate. And desperate moves are the most dangerous of all. 8:15 a.m. Desperation has a sound, and this morning it's the roar of a Russian Su-30 SM tearing down from altitude. Burning through the last of its fuel reserves, the pilot dives straight toward a patrolling Super Hornet. It's a textbook intimidation pass, the kind of reckless move designed to rattle an opponent into flinching. But this isn't Syria. This is the Arctic, and the pilot he's facing is Top Gun trained. The American rolls inverted, drops low, and snaps onto the Russian's tail in 2.7 seconds flat. A missile tone fills the cockpit. An AM-9X Sidewinder lock, one squeeze away from fire. The American doesn't press. He holds steady and cold. Discipline over impulse. Power without panic. And in that restraint, the Russians see the truth. The US could end this fight any second. Beneath the waves, the pressure breaks too. The Kilo-class submarine raises its snorkel mast, desperate to recharge. A tiny move, but fatal. Sonar arrays aboard the Thomas Hudner pin its position within 14 meters. The Virginia-class sub already trails it, torpedoes primed. If war began now, Russia would lose a submarine before it could blink, and Moscow knows it.
8:22 a.m. The facade cracks. The Admiral Levchenko shifts her radar again, this time not in a scan, not in a bluff, but in fire control quality lock. Every frequency sharpened, every beam focused. The crosshairs sit directly on the USS Gerald R. Ford. It is no longer a shadow game. It is a gun pointed at America's capital ship. Inside the Ford, alarms scream. In combat centers across the strike group, targeting solutions finalize in silence. Dozens of SM-6 missiles are ready. CIWS turrets spin up. Submarines below align their tubes. For 31 agonizing seconds, every sailor and pilot knows one truth. If a trigger is pulled, World War III begins here. And then, just as suddenly, the beam drops. The Russian radar winks back to passive. A warning given, but not pressed. A gamble pulled back from the edge. But the damage is already done. In the language of naval warfare, a lock is not a drill. It is a declaration. And the United States has answered without a single shot. Because the Russians don't yet realize, the worst blow is coming from silence. And it's already on their tail. 8:34 a.m. The Arctic breaks in spray as a black hull rises from the depths. USS New Hampshire, a Virginia-class attack submarine, surfaces just 6.2 nautical miles from the Admiral Levchenko. The sight alone is enough to rattle every Russian lookout on deck. For 9 days, this submarine has stalked them in absolute silence. Their sonar buoys, dipping helicopters, and hull-mounted arrays all failed to detect it. Now it breaches the surface like a leviathan, an open reminder. The Russians were never the hunters. They were the hunted. On Russian radar screens, chaos reigns. Growler jamming spreads ghosts across their scopes. Super Hornets slice the skies in 9G turns, while the Su-30s struggle on fumes, their outdated sensors saturated. One Russian pilot breaks formation, declaring a fuel emergency. Another follows. One by one, they peel off, heading for home with barely enough kerosene left to reach land. The Russians came to intimidate. Instead, they're cornered, outnumbered, and humiliated in 3 dimensions: air, sea, and undersea. But the Americans don't fire. They don't need to, because power isn't in the strike, it's in the silence before it. And now, the silence is deafening.
9:06 a.m. The Russian formation collapses. Destroyers slow. Fighters vanish over the horizon. Submarines slip back beneath the Arctic waves, silent, humiliated. Minutes later, Moscow broadcasts a flat message. Joint Arctic readiness exercise complete. Units withdrawing per plan. Everyone listening knows it's a lie. They hadn't come to practice. They came to provoke, and they failed. The Gerald R. Ford never fired. No missiles left their tubes. No torpedoes tore the deep. Yet the message was louder than any explosion. This sea is owned. For the Russians, the lesson was bitter. For the Americans, it was proof that restraint can be sharper than steel. But victory in silence carries its own shadow, because somewhere under the same Arctic waters, Russia still holds hundreds of warheads, dozens of submarines, and the will to gamble again. And in Beijing, commanders take notes, watching, learning, preparing. The world won't remember July's standoff in headlines, but those who know warfare understand it wasn't just avoided, it was won, without a shot, without a casualty, without mercy. The question isn't if this happens again, it's when. And the next time, silence may not be enough.